Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Holly Corbett. I'm the VP of Content here for Consciously Unbiased, a movement to build inclusion in the workplace. This is part two of a conversation we had about 6 months ago called How to Be a Conscious Leader, where we unpack the defining principles of conscious leadership. And so I'm very excited to be back here today with the three leaders we had from our previous conversation, because to me, all three of you are just such a wonderful example of leading with heart. So let's welcome our guests. It's Dr. Linnell Plummer, CEO and founder of Onyx Therapy Group, Melva LaJoy Legrand, CEO and founder of LaJoy Plans, and Paul Wolf, Human First Leadership Advocate and author of Human Beings First, Practices for Empathetic, Expressive Leadership. So thank you all for being back on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess let's just start off by, level setting here. Can each of you share again, what does it mean exactly to be a conscious leader? Dr. Plummer, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. Let's do it. So when I think about conscious leadership, I think about it, of course, from a mental health psychological perspective around consciousness. So making sure that everything we do is intentional, that we are self-aware, that we understand the impact and the influence that we have. So there's oftentimes when we are moving in life, especially when we're not leaders and we're just doing things, right? We're operating from a subconscious kind of way. If someone asked us why we did that, it may take us a few minutes to kind of think about the answer. We're just operating maybe from ego, from insecurity. We're operating from feelings and emotions, which we shouldn't, because those are only 96 seconds. 96 seconds. That's it, y'all. And yet we make these decisions, right? And we have these behaviors. But with conscious leadership, we are very aware and intentional of what we are doing, how we are doing it, and what the impact and influence is. So thank you. And I'm glad to be here again, Holly and team.
We always love having you on. You're one of our favorites. So I just wanted to point out 96 seconds. Is that a cycle of emotions? Is that how long it takes?
Actually, it's shorter. The cycle is shorter than that. So there's a difference between emotions and feelings. Emotion is the physiological burst that lets the body know that something is happening, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is 6 seconds, only 6 seconds. It's the body saying, boom, something is going on. We're having a feeling. So it's like the entryway into the emotion, into the feeling, excuse me. That is the emotion. The feeling is then what we are comfortable and used to experiencing, right? Happiness, sadness, confusion, things like that. That is 96 seconds, because remember, all of this is chemical, right? And so it starts in our limbic system, moves through our limbic system, through our senses, especially our hearing and our seeing. It gives a 6-second emotional burst, which is followed by a 90-second feeling that goes through the amygdala. And as it's traveling up, it moves into the prefrontal cortex, and then the cortex, which is where our thoughts are happening and where our executive functioning happens. Now, many people think that the feelings last longer because the feeling will attach to a thought and the thought will ruminate. And so if you keep that thought going on for 5 minutes, then the feeling is still bursting, right? The emotion is bursting, the feeling keeps going through the cycle. So in therapy, what we try to do is intervene the thought, because if we could intervene the thought, we could reduce the reemergence of the emotion and of the feeling. So that, for all that are listening, is part of your conscious leadership. Now you know that when you or your staff are having emotions and feelings, you know what it is. And then that gives you an opportunity to intervene through the thought, ask them what they're thinking. And then that allows the thought to now shift over, go to another pathway, to another thought, which removes the connection to that initial emotion and that initial feeling.
So what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is that conscious leadership is about not coming from that reactive, like place of feelings and emotions that happen really quick in the moment, and kind of rising above that and being more mindful and aware of how you're choosing to react and respond.
Absolutely. Because and with that, a conscious leader also should know what their triggers are.
Mm.
What words do you hear from your staff that causes you to be emotional or causes you to be insecure? What experiences do you have that causes you to feel uncomfortable? And when you know all of those things, you're no longer surprised when it happens, because now you have something that you can do afterwards. You don't have to have an emotional response. You don't have to have a feeling response. You can move right into the thinking part of it, which allows you to continue to stay grounded. We know that when a leader gets emotional, the staff tends to get emotional too. And then there's a spiral that happens there. The work doesn't get done because now everybody is processing and dealing with emotions and feelings, as opposed to actually thinking through what needs to happen and the next steps. So conscious leadership involves the information we're sharing here about emotions and feelings. It also involves knowing our triggers. It's all about self-awareness and then what we do with that self-awareness through intentionality.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thank you.
A good definition. Melva, what's your definition?
Well, I think I want to go here. From my perspective, I think conscious leaders understand that we are managing the whole human, the whole human. And I think some pillars of conscious leadership are love, grace, and empathy. Love, grace, and empathy. And when I say love, and I like what Dr. Plummer said, I think it's twofold. I think it's genuine appreciation and value for the talent that you bring in, but loving yourself enough to know what you know, to not be insecure or threatened by people, by your colleagues, by your employees that have a skill set that may be stronger or different than yours. So that's the love piece. The empathy piece is to say that we may not, me and my employees or my team may not have the same lived experience, but I can have empathy and make myself available to hear what they're bringing into the workplace, because it is no longer true that, we clock in and everything from the outside world doesn't impact us. I think we have to. I think a conscious leader has to include empathetic, empathetic conversations, dialogue, making themselves available. And then the last one is new for me, but I think it's important. I think we need a whole lot of grace, a whole lot of grace. And grace to me means forgiveness. It means patience. It means meeting people where they are. And I think that's particularly important this year because we have, how do I want to say it, so much noise outside of the workplace. And sometimes I find that rather than react to what somebody might be feeling, the emotionality of it, maybe the best reaction is to take a breath and to deposit, some grace, to give a little, because maybe that person is not having a good day for whatever reason, and it's not actually about the work. They can't do the work because it's actually about their humanity. So in summary, I think if for all of those listening, I love that phrasing, I think a conscious leader understands that we are not AI, we are not robots, we are humans first. And we are up to the challenge of honoring, valuing, celebrating, coaching, which we're going to get into, the humanity of our employees that allows leaders to do the great work that we want to do. That's what I think.
So love, empathy, and grace. Those are great traits to keep in mind as leaders. Thank
I
you.
think so. And thank you again for having me. And I have to say something to Dr. Plummer. So, because she's so brilliant and so many ways. But as she was talking about our thoughts, emotions, I don't even want to say all the words because I'll mispronounce them. But what came up for me is this truth. My granny would say, all storms pass. All storms pass. And I would say, Gran, well, how do you know that? She was like, the sun rises every day, doesn't it? So I know we have the 96 seconds and the thought and the emotion, but for folks that were trying to keep up and take notes like me, I think leaders understand that all storms pass.
That's a great reminder to get some perspective, right? When there's a lot of noise and a lot of disruption around us, to kind of hold on to that truth. Paul, what about you?
All of that. That's said much better than I will ever say it. To what Melva said, the title of my book is Human Beings First. We are all human beings first. That is a universal truth. We are all the same in that. I think, to me, to add on to what Dr. Plummer and Melva defined as conscious leadership, to me, it's moving from the golden rule to the platinum rule. It's not treating others like I want to be treated. It's treating others like they want to be treated. And in order to do that, you have to get to know them. You have to get to know, whether it be peers, your direct reports, friends. You can take this outside of leadership and just being a good human, but like understanding a bit about them. Simple example I'll give you is I had, when I was at Indeed, I had 8 direct reports. One of them hated public recognition, hated. And the only reason I learned that is because our CEO recognized this person once when we all happened to be in Dublin. She was based in Dublin. And she had a look on her face afterwards. And I'm like, tell me what's going on. Like, what's wrong? Like, what happened? And she's like, I just hate it. And so like, I simply learned that about her. And if we all, the senior leadership team happened to be in Dublin again, because she happened to be our first employee in Dublin, I'd be like, remember, like, let's not call. I'm not going to use her name because I'm still friends with her to this day. I just texted her the other day for her birthday. I'm like, let's not do this. If we want to recognize her, do it with a small group. Versus other people in my team that liked a handwritten note or liked public recognition. It's just getting to know them. And it's sometimes I get, as I'm out there talking about the book and Human Beings First, I get the question of, well, there's a line between employer and employee. And I'm like, there still is. There's a line between leader and employee. Like, you're not gonna, if you're going through a messy divorce or something not great, you're not necessarily going to share all that information. You may just tell people you're going through something personal, it's weighing on you, and you may not show up in the same way that you've been showing up. And so we still have to have a little bit of a filter, but I think it's really trying to get to know people. And I think Dr. Plummer said this, kind of meeting people where they are, getting to know them and understanding how they like to get feedback, how they like to receive recognition, how they like to have their meetings. Maybe they want a walking meeting versus a Zoom, or whatever the case may be. And so I think, to me, that's what conscious leader, it's awareness. It is pure awareness of yourself and your feelings and the people that are around you.
Yeah, that is so good. So awareness of self and awareness of others. And I think that, that takes some work, and it takes some time, and it takes some effort up front, right? To like do the work on yourself, to take time to understand people around you. But in the long run, it contributes to the strength of your team, to the success of the organization, to employee experience and innovation. And so I just think that's just a really, really good reminder that these things, getting to know people, like it may sound nice, it's actually very necessary too, right? To the success of the business.
I think you're right. And it's nurturing a relationship, because most people, when they leave, they're leaving a leader, not a company. And I think it will also, and I've seen leaders do this really well, and I've also seen them have their teams run through brick walls for them, because they were so aware of themselves and of their team and how that all needed to work well together. You just get more loyalty, more camaraderie. It works in all cases for you.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot, obviously, about leadership because of this talk, and I was thinking leaders are leadership is about having a vision, right? A bigger vision, and getting people behind that vision, at the same time recognizing the strengths, the individual strengths of the people on your team, and being able to help them grow and leverage those strengths. And conscious leadership, I think the difference is really having a purpose that contributes to the greater good and not only your personal gain. And that requires all the things that all of you just talked about, like self-awareness and mindfulness and compassion. And something else I was reading, I can't remember the source. I'll try to find it and share it later. What people are looking for in leaders right now, the biggest thing people are looking for is hope. And I just thought that was so interesting is, people are really looking to leaders for hope. And I think that if you are taking the time to do the work of self-awareness, do the work of being aware of your teams and creating a vision that isn't just about you, but that is about the greater collective good and success. That's where hope comes in. So I just thank you for sharing all of those answers. That was really interesting. I did want to talk about something I read recently was John Maxwell's leadership theory. It's called the law of the lid. This was new to me, but it essentially says leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. So in essence, you can only be as effective as you are a leader. And so I believe that we can only lead others as well as we are able to lead ourselves. And so I'd love to find out from each of you, what kind of personal work do you think is essential in order to effectively lead others?
I can kick us off if you like. So when I was thinking about the question and also hearing you say the question, one of the first things that came to mind was my time when I was in the United States Army. I'm a veteran of the United States Army, and my father is also a veteran of the United States Army. And when we are in leadership positions, so I went into the Army as an officer. And when we go into those positions, they are doing different background checks on us as well. And before it's time for us to go into any sort of deployment, they're also doing an additional background check. And in that background check, they're asking for a number of things, like are they looking for a number of things like our credit scores? They're looking for our payments on our mortgages and rents and all sorts of things that you are thinking this is not mission required, right? Like you don't need to know what these things are. But what they're really assessing is how do you manage your life? And if you can manage your life well, then we can entrust you with our soldiers, right? Because these soldiers are looking towards their leader for all decisions. We're putting our lives on the line based off of what our leader tells us to do. That's a different type of pressure when you're a leader in that environment. And so the expectation is that if you can manage your physical health, if you can manage your strength, if you can manage your money, if you can manage your words, if you can manage your credit, if you can manage your bills, then you are now able to manage other people, right? And so when I think about that, now that I'm a CEO here and I'm a department chair, I think about how important it is for me to consistently model what is happening in my life so that my team that's following me has some sense of transparency around me. And subsequently, they understand that they can trust me because I trust myself. And they can learn to be disciplined or continue to embody discipline because they see my discipline. And also, and we'll talk about the different leadership models in a little bit, but there's a level of transparency that's there that allows people to trust. And when they trust, then they are able to have that hope, which is also an emotion, right? So in order to keep the emotion of hope going, they have to have the experience of trust, which is not an emotion. And so that experience continues to emphasize or highlight that particular emotion. I know that was a long way around. You're probably like, Dr. Plummer, what? You started off talking about the Army and veterans and deployment, and now you're talking about hope. But that's my life. So there we go.
No, I think that is just such a great story to illustrate the point that it starts with self-trust, right? If you can trust yourself by taking care of yourself and keeping your house in order, then others are able to trust you, and you're able to trust yourself in leading others. So yeah, that was great. Thank you.
I want to build on that because I think there's another component. So it is not a secret that I am a survivor of sexual assault and domestic abuse. And I think one of the greatest gifts I have given myself through the power of journaling, through the power of some amazing therapists, is understanding and managing my trauma. And the reason why I bring this up in the conversation around conscious leadership, I think we could all agree that hurt people hurt other people, right? And so sometimes I think what happens is for certain leaders, because they've not taken the time, taken a step back to resolve and become complete with whatever their story is, they then project onto their employees those things that they couldn't do, they didn't resolve, etc. And it creates this domino effect of not empowering employees, but almost shrinking them. So I think one of the best things that any leader can do is become complete in whatever their trauma story is, because I think we've all been through things, one, and then to use that as a, let's say, an anchor to deposit hope, to show up authentic, and to create space that it's okay in the workplace to make mistakes, to ask questions, to feel confused and to feel lost at times. I think a conscious leader, outside of love, empathy, and grace, I'm building on my answer here, but I also think you have to have authenticity, you have to have vulnerability, and you, with time, it took me 2 decades, you need to commit to yourself, love yourself enough to do the work that you're not projecting bad behavior or past trauma onto your employees. That's what I would say. I think Dr. Plummer would call it emotional or psychological safety. Did I get that right?
You did. You got it right. As you were talking, I was like, this is psychological safety. You better get it, Melva. Way to go.
Thank you for sharing, Melva. And thank you for all the work that you have done to become the leader that you are today of a mission-driven organization that's really making an impact on your employees' lives and the people that you're serving. So thank you for that. And you said that we have to start by doing the work on ourselves and addressing our own traumas. And yes, that's a long road. Is there any advice on where to begin for people who maybe don't know where to even start? Like, how did you get started?
I think, so this is my truth. I started at the bottom. I'm just being honest. I was maybe 18 or 19 when I came forward with childhood trauma. And my trigger, I think we'll use that word, is I was watching a movie. I can't tell you the name of the movie. And I just started to sob. And a friend of mine, who is still a friend to this day, I told him my entire story. And he met me. He was quiet the entire time. And he said, you got to tell your parents. And once I started doing that, then became the therapy, then became the journaling, et cetera, and I stumbled. I want to be clear. This has not been a fairy tale. It's ended up well, but it's not been a fairy tale. So to answer your specific question, I think the start is one, acknowledging whatever happened and making yourself available to receive the support. And if you can, which was very hard for me, release any shame or any negative narrative around it. Part of the reason why I didn't begin my healing journey earlier is I had a narrative that if I say what happened, I wouldn't have space and place to be a leader. Well, not even a leader, to work, to do anything. And through that conversation, I remember it like it was yesterday because I'm trying to hold it together. That beautiful friend of mine listened to me without judgment. And I guess what I would tell someone who has doubts, it's a divorce or it's whatever your trauma is, I need you to know that there is a space and place for all experiences. There is a space and place for leaders who have managed their mess and made it their message. You just have to start. And I'll give you one other one. Hope. You talked about hope. I think I mentioned this before. For some, it believes hold on, pain ends. That is true. That is hope. But I would tell anyone to open yourself up to your lived experience and watch how people love on you and value your authenticity.
Thank you. Before we go on to Paul, I don't know, Dr. Plummer, if you have anything to add, anything you think is important to say.
No, I think Melva said it. I guess I do have something to add, and it's really to emphasize, to put an exclamation mark behind it, which is that because we are, and I see that there's some communication in the chat there, especially from Ms. Went, talking about our lived experiences and our cultural identities and increasing our awareness. Just like Melva mentioned at the beginning, we are working with and managing full humans, and we are full humans too, right? And so it is important for us to enter into the leadership space, recognizing the fullness of who we are, and also understanding what parts of us need some additional healing and refinement. Just because you move up the ladder in leadership doesn't always mean that you're ready for leadership. You have to be processing your hurts, your insecurities, your past traumas, and those things happen outside of the workplace. You can't be in the meeting with your employee and trying to have a healing moment at that time. You have to get some coaching, right? That happens off hours. You have to get some therapy that happens off hours. You have to journal in the morning and set yourself up for success before you go into the workspace. There's things that you have to do to prepare yourself because you are also a human. You're not a robot just because you're a leader. You're not a robot just because you're extremely smart or brilliant. You have experiences. And so treat yourself with care. Everyone keeps talking about self-care. I love the hashtags. I love all the things. But self-care also means that you recognize who you are in work. It's a matter of caring for yourself in all environments and making sure that you are setting yourself up for success every single day.
Can I add one last thing? And then I'm sorry, I will stop, I promise. But I was like, ooh, Dr. Plummer, you just said something. This is the other thing I want to say. I think sometimes people see us and they're meeting us at this stage, right? But I also want to bring up that I think conscious leadership involves constant personal evaluation. And I'll use myself as an example. I just talked about all of the work I did. All of that is true. And 4 years ago, my father died. And I didn't do any work. I didn't do any work other than the day he died, I went to work. And so what I want to tell people is right now, as of 2 months ago, I'm back doing the work. And it is the greatest gift. It is hard. I don't know why people lie about that. It is hard. It is humbling. But my hope, my prayer is that I am showing up for my team, real, authentic, vulnerable, and owning that which I haven't resolved, which is that my father is gone. When that is complete, I know on the other end, I'm hoping on the other end is a stronger, better Melva. is a stronger, better leader. And so I don't think conscious leadership, you wake up one day and you're it. I think it's an active behavior. I think it is a verb, and it's someone who's trying to do it, and it's not always fun. I just wanted to encourage someone that this is a practice. This is a practice.
Thank you. Paul, what about you? What kind of personal work do you think is essential?
I think the two things, I guess three things I would add: self-awareness and honest self-awareness, which touches on what Dr. Plummer and Melva have talked about. I think you've got to be good at introspection, whether that's journaling or just sitting and, post-mortem thinking through what happened, how did I react? That's the thing that we control, is how we react, how we show up for somebody. In Melva's case, her friend listening was so good, rather than trying to give advice or what you should do and how you should feel, because you don't know, because you haven't lived it. One of my go-tos is how can I best support you? What can I do to help you? And that's meeting somebody where they are. I'm not going to assume I know what you want or how I'm going to be able to best serve you. I think the last thing is humility, because one, there are a lot of people that become leaders because it's the next thing, and it's the next thing they think that's going to make them more money, and they don't think about all the things. You get paid more to be a leader because you've got to take care of people, and they're humans and you're humans. It's not just about the administrative side of things. There's, once you get more than two people involved, you're going to have a difference of opinion at some point. You've got to deal with all that stuff. And you're also not perfect. We as humans are these fragile beings, and we have strengths and we have weaknesses. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses in areas of development. And so knowing what those areas of development are and shoring those areas up. I'll give you a very kind of inconsequential example. I became an HR leader by leading HR, not by growing up in HR. I knew, and my last full-time job, indeed, I still knew it 20 something years later, was my area of expertise is not compensation and benefits. That's it. So I would hire really good people that were smarter than me. I wanted everyone that reported to me to be smarter than me, because it's going to make the team better. And ultimately, somebody else can do my job when I'm ready to tap out. And that's what happened at Indeed. And so I think that vulnerability is so important, but just being humble. You are not all that. You are this person, and you bring this to the table, and all these other people bring these other things. It's a big jigsaw puzzle at the end of the day. No one is just the one big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. It takes a team, and you're part of something bigger. I think that's really what it's about when whatever your role is, you're part of this collective and something bigger. And I think what we were just talking about was a lot about the inner work of leadership, what happens on the inside, what happens that, the outside world isn't seeing. And so I wanted to move on and ask for an example of what conscious leadership looks like in the outside world. I'd love to hear, maybe we'll start with you, Paul. We did this segment 6 months ago. And so in the last 6 months, what's an example of someone who you think acted in a way that really shows what conscious leadership is like in action?
Yeah. I'm going to give you an organizational example, because I really like it, and I'm watching it now. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a Wall Street Journal article about Moderna, the drug manufacturer, and how they have taken their chief people officer, and she's become the chief people and digital technology officer at the organization, to think about organizationally and with a human lens, how AI can best help their organization and their employees. And in the article and some subsequent pieces I've read about this, and it's still new, but I think this is conscious leadership at its best, because there's so many companies and leaders that are using AI as a weapon against employees. They're, oh, AI is going to take your job. That's why you have to come back 5 days a week. This forced return to office thing is, don't get me started, because that's a whole separate hour-long conversation with me, because I've got lots of opinions about that. But instead of using AI as this weapon, this grenade that you're throwing in things and seeing how people react or how they kind of duck and take cover, Moderna seems to be taking the approach of, let's holistically look at the organization, let's look at AI, let's look at our human resources, our people, and see how we can best make these two work together. The thing I like about AI is, there are easy ways to get it to take over these redundant, administrative, mind-numbing things that leaders have to do. And leaders can really start to lean in instead of dealing with all this minutia, and get to know their employees and get to know their direct reports and the people that they work with on a regular basis, and build these deeper relationships. This is about nurturing. I think Melva said it. This is an ongoing, all of these things are ongoing practices. Like any relationship, you've got to nurture it. It's going to have its ebbs and flows, but as long as you're continuing to fertilize it and water it and weed it when it needs to be weeded, hopefully you'll end up with something that's beautiful at the end of the day. But it's this ongoing process. And that's what my hope is for companies that embrace AI in the right way, is they're going to free up their leaders to do these other things that they haven't had necessarily the time to do. I also think it's going to start to uncover leaders that really don't want to be leaders, because they were so focused on the minutia, which is fine, because we have, if you think about it, engineering is the best example. They, for the longest time, have created two paths for people to grow. There's the individual contributor path, and there is the leadership path, knowing that not everybody's cut out to be a leader, nor should that be the only option for them. And I think that is great. And so I think organizationally, we need to start thinking about, how can we do that in a way in other functions where my only choice isn't to become a leader, but I can still contribute in a meaningful way by being an individual contributor, because I've got this niche skill set. I understand AI better than other people. And I mean, that's a big statement, because AI has only been around for, publicly in the last couple of years. I don't know that there's an AI expert, but thinking about things like that. So this Moderna example, to me, is a very recent example of conscious leadership, kind of at its best at an organizational level. Not just, I'm sure that their chief people officer had some play in this, and their executive team embracing it. But it's something I'm going to watch closely. I think it is a great example of conscious leadership right now.
Yeah, it's about being intentional about the advancement of AI and how to be able to leverage it in a way that works for employees, rather than as a tool of fear or control. So that's a really interesting example.
Right. How is it another arrow in my quiver that we can use to make things better for everybody? But the consumer at the end of the day, with better drugs, better vaccines and things like that. But it's not something that you need to be scared of. And I think there are some companies, and I've heard it, not publicly, but privately, where there are leaders that are using AI as a weapon. And that is not what it should be. Let's use it it can be used for bad. Everything can be used for good or for bad. My choice would be, let's embrace AI. Let's be intentional about it. Let's think about what this means more broadly, and really make it a tool that everybody feels comfortable using.
Yeah, that's a good organizational example. Dr. Plummer, do you have a recent example of conscious leadership?
I do. So I recently, since our last time together, I took a position as a department chair at a local university, right? How did you do that? Thank you. Everybody is like, girl, what? You don't know, your hands are not full with these kids in the CEO position. And I'm like, Lord, the Lord has given me more, so I will abide. Nonetheless, I have taken the position, and one of my colleagues, her name is Dr. Rosanna Sanchez-John. She is amazing. She knows me well from some other work that we've done, and we earned our doctorate together as well. And she realized that I was getting a little anxious about some of the work that I was doing. So I tell everybody I'm a hardcore Virgo. I am about data and spreadsheets and charts. And I think my assistant is on, and she's probably going to laugh about all of this. But I'm very disciplined, and I have vision and goal, but I like people, right? And so that's me. With the vision that I was creating, I was moving very Virgo-esque, right? So this is the vision, and this is how we're going to do it. This is our timeline. These are our charts. I've incorporated your thoughts and your positions in all of this. And one day, Dr. Sanchez John, pulled me to the side and said, hey, Dr. Plummer, I think that some of this is not hitting well, right? Like, I think I see your intentions, but some of this is going a little too, it's going too fast and a little too hard for the culture that we have here, right? And she is the example of conscious leadership to me. And I want to bring that up because she is not the highest person in the in our orbit, right? Like, there's me, and then there's the dean, and there's the provost, and there's the president, and she's not in those positions, but yet she's conscious as a leader because she understood what we call adaptive leadership style. She recognized that she was seeing something that was not going to be working for the team, and that she needed to have courage, right? That goes back to the psychological safety, to be able to come back to me and say, hey, we got to do this differently, right? Like, the vision is perfect, the plan is great, but you're moving at a speed that's different from the culture that we have here. And so it's going to end up turning people off, and we're not going to be able to get to that vision if we steamroll everything, right? Like, we have to take it from a different perspective. And I'll tell you that I love the work that I get to do in both places, at Onyx and at Trinity Washington University. But I've had Onyx for so long that it is just second nature to me how I work here. And I don't do those things that I was describing at Trinity here. And part of it is I was insecure, right? I was like, I have to show that I can do this work. They've entrusted me with this work. I need to be able to show this vision. And the president has asked this of me, and my dean has asked this of me. And so subsequently, I started to feel insecure. I started to doubt myself. And I let some of the things that I had previously worked on, right? I previously worked on these things. I let them get the best of me again. And it took for Dr. Rosanna Sanchez John to pull me to the side as an adaptive leader and say, hey, sis, we gotta look at this a little differently. Now, let me tell you, I was a little embarrassed. Okay, I'm lying. I was very embarrassed. Because I was like, I should know better, right? I'm the leader. I should do all of this. But all the things that I'm telling you all, and that Melva is talking about, and that Paul is talking about, and that Holly is highlighting as well, we live these lives. We're not just experts just because, like, we have lived it and are living it. So a special shout out to Dr. Sanchez John for reminding me who I am, what I am capable of, as well as showing me a different, another conscious leader. So shout out to her. I appreciate you.
I love that example. And it's another reminder that leadership can happen at all levels, any level. We can all be leaders. It's how we show up, and it's how we use our voice, and it's having courage, and it's all of those things. So thank you. Melva?
I'm too busy like nodding in agreement, like, yes, yes, yes. So my example is from a client, and I'm only not mentioning their name because I forgot to ask their permission, but they are, they are a foundation, and we're working on a variety of events for them. And they ask themselves this question: who have we not considered in the room? Now, a lot of people ask themselves that question. They think, oh, is our panel diverse enough? Oh, have we considered dietary needs? Like, a lot of people do that and should continue, to do that. But this particular foundation did something that I have not seen a lot of people do, and they hired an accessibility consultant. And this accessibility consultant, for this particular event, did a blind assessment of all things related to this particular event, from physical mobility to our language equity, like every lens that you could think of. And for me, from where I sat, I thought to myself a couple of things. One, they could have just continued doing what is known as the minimum, right? And it is widely accepted. But they held themselves to a higher standard because their objective is to make sure that all of their attendees feel seen, valued, and heard. And that assessment costs money. The debrief will take time. There is actually a post accessibility training that we're all going through. So for me, I think they are a perfect example of what happens when conscious leadership is not a noun, it is a verb. And they have put the money, the time, and their cultural cachet behind it. And they have decided as a foundation that this is who we are. Everyone deserves to feel seen in our experiences. And more importantly, to Paul's point, we don't know it all. So actually, we're going to all go through training so that we can be of the posture of who we want to be as a foundation. I think they're incredible. Oh, and my team's going through the training too.
Nice. That again, you're saying it comes back to intentional action. That's a common theme, I think, with conscious leadership that I'm hearing today. I did want to call out one example that I saw recently. The CEO of Marriott. I don't know if y'all read about this example, but I thought he did a really good job of sticking to his values. So there was, the rolling back of DEI is happening. And the CEO of Marriott came out and he said, look, we welcome all people. We create opportunities for all people. That won't change. And I think, he said in an interview, like, I was nervous about it. I don't know if that was the right thing to say. He's like, but that's been our values for decades and decades, and it's not going to change. And so to me, I just thought that was such a good example of just staying rooted in your values. No matter what's happening in the outside world, the values are something that are core to a person or an organization. And he said the next day he got 40,000 emails from Marriott employees just thanking him for clarifying that they are sticking to their values. And so to me, that was a really good example of what it means to be a conscious leader.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say any company that is still focused on DIB, it's not, to Melva's point, it's not just a checklist thing. It's especially in the environment today, and I don't want to get political, but in the environment today, the companies that we're still doing this because it is one of our values. It is important to us for these reasons. That's all an example of conscious leadership right now.
Yeah. And I think these times are very, very disruptive. There's a lot happening. We talked about AI and what's happening with AI in the workplace and shifting geopolitics and changing policies. And so I really want to address, like, how do leaders stay conscious in times of disruption and keep their teams engaged in times of disruption when things seem to be changing so quickly? How do you stay centered and grounded, I guess, is my question.
I think for me, and my husband and I have this conversation a lot because there are sometimes that he will go down a rabbit hole on things. I have to, just as a human and as a leader, I have to focus on what I can control. I can control how I treat people. I can control how I react to something. I can control how I take care of my family. That's what my focus is. I can control how I show up for my team. I think one of the things leaders, and I get this, vulnerability is something I talk a lot about in my talks. because I was vulnerable with 10,000 people at Indeed in an email one day. And it is so important to create safe spaces to have conversations, and you don't have to have every answer. This is sometimes leaders get so hung up, and I think Dr. Plummer, you experience this with your conscious leadership example. Is you're put in this role, these people are depending on me, I have to show up and know everything, and we don't. And you don't have to be able to solve your employee's problem by creating a safe space or saying, how can I best support you? If somebody has a mental health challenge, you can say, how can I best support you? And hey, do you know about these resources that we have as a company that may be able to help you a little bit better? And I think that's where sometimes leaders back away from things because they don't know what to do. And one of the simplest things is what can I do best to help you? Like, how can I help you? Is something that is a very powerful question, a very powerful tool that leaders can use. And that's, again, going back to the platinum rule, you're kind of learning from the employee what they need from you and how you best can support them, and you're meeting them where they need to be met. I think that's what is truly important.
Can I build on that? Because I was like, ooh, I want to build on that. I also think this is a moment for conscious leaders to be consistent. So I think part of the disruption, this is Melville Joy Legrand's theory, is that part of the disruption is going with the trend or going with the moment, and it's leaving people feeling untethered. And I think that when you are a conscious leader, just speaking for myself, Melville Joy Legrand knows who she is and knows whose she is. And my business is such. And so I think being consistent with whatever your moral compass is matters. I think being consistent and communicative about the path forward, even as the larger world may be changing, matters. I think being transparent matters. And so for me, I think this is an exciting moment for leaders, conscious leaders, to take the virtual or in-person main stage and remind people of their why, of their who, of their values. Because I think often for some of us, I think we are the calm in the disruption. We are the calm. And in order for people, I think, to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel that this is a place where they can explore and grow, they just need that reminder and that confirmation that the leader that you were in 2024 or the leader that you were in 2023 has evolved, ideally enhanced themselves, but their moral compass is not up for debate, regardless of any outside noise or influences. Because we are who we are, speaking from Melville Joy Legrand, I am who I am as a leader, 365, 24/7. And I think my team, my hope is that my team feels at peace and comfortable with that fact. And it allows them to navigate the disruption, knowing that I am steering the ship with values that still are true and resonate with them.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying, right? Self-awareness and knowing who you are, because if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, you're going to get knocked down when things start to shift and change. But if you're taking the time to do the work, know who you are, know what you stand for, know what your values are, then it's going to be easier to stick to those values when times are hard. When they're easy, it won't matter, because it's easy to stick to your values when things are easy. When it gets hard, that's when the real challenge comes in. But if you've done the work and you understand what you stand for, then you'll be able to stand by what you stand for.
100%. And I also think that conscious leaders exist in the absence of ego. Mm-hmm. I don't need anyone other than my husband, hi dear, to give me external affirmation. Not at this stage. I don't. right? Because sometimes conscious leadership, as Dr. Plummer mentioned, involves courage. Sometimes you won't be the most popular, the most trendy, the most whatever, but are you true to who you are and what you believe? And what allows me to sleep well at night, what I think allows my business to grow is that I won't shift for the view of the moment.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
set the view of the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you brought that up, because back to the Marriott CEO example, yeah, he got 40,000 emails from employees thanking him. But what if he didn't? That's not what it's about. That's the icing on the cake. But what it's about is that sticking to values and sticking to truth, regardless of if you're going to get accolades or not, right? That's true conscious leadership, in my opinion.
Holly, if I could build on, right? That's what we're saying, Melva. We're building on. If I could build on, I know we only have a couple of seconds, right? So I'll be brief. Is that possible? Let's try it and see. But I did want to highlight that there are several books that are out there that helps a leader identify what type of leadership style they have. What is happening in this conversation is that most of us are talking about one particular leadership style, which is called authentic leadership style. And that happens to be, I believe, the leadership style for myself, Melva, and Paul. But there are various different types of leadership styles. So it is important for a leader, because we're talking about self-awareness and intentionality, for a leader to know what their leadership style is. An introvert knows that they're an introvert, and subsequently they know how to navigate the space. An extrovert knows that they're an extrovert, so they know how to navigate the space. There's different personality traits that we have, and as we increase our awareness, we know those things, and then subsequently we learn how to navigate the space. Equally so, it is important that a leader learns what their leadership style is. The author of the book that I use for my course at my leadership course that I teach is Peter Northouse, and the book is amazing. He has several books. One of them in particular is called Leadership. It is the 9th edition. And in that book, he highlights, I believe, 10 different leadership styles. And he talks about or writes about what the characteristics are, how it shows up in the workplace, what the strengths are, because there's strengths to each of these leadership styles. You don't have to just have one, and what the challenges are. So for those of us that are authentic leaders, we also have challenges in our authenticity, right? Because sometimes we come across way too much of ourselves, and that can scare people, right? They're like, but you were the leader. And so there's more introduction that we have to do in this particular style so people understand who we are. So there's different types of leadership styles that have different strengths and that have different challenges. I did it in 2 minutes, Holly, Paul, and Melva. Please be proud of me.
That was impressive. Thank you. Well, I just want to say thank you again to all three of you. I love having these conversations and holding this space with you. And I know we only have 2 minutes left, so I'd like to leave the audience with a quick tool or takeaway. Could each of you share one action step or micro progression, as we call them at Consciously Unbiased, that leaders of all levels can do in their own workplaces to practice conscious leadership?
Be intentional, get some support. So coaching, counseling, heal yourself, and read that book, Peter Northouse, right? Leadership, Theory and Practice. Oh, and you can reach out to me too. I'm here to help.
How do we get in touch with you? Where can people find you?
Yes, I can be found everywhere. Put my name in Google, right? Like use AI for what it can be done. My name is here, Dr. Linnell R. Plummer. Blame my mama for my name, not me. And you can also put in Onyx Therapy Group. Onyx Therapy Group. Put in either one of those. It's going to bring you right back to me. It'll bring you to my LinkedIn pages, my IG pages. It'll take you to my new book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women. And it will take you to any publication that I've been able to be a part of, as well as my TED Talk. So Linnell R. Plummer, Onyx Therapy Group. Thank you so much again, Holly, and Melva and Paul too.
I think for me, the one thing is building psychological safety with your team. And that means showing up as a human, being vulnerable, being all the things that these amazing women on this panel have talked about today. That's one of the most important things to me. Melva, it's off to you. Build on that.
Off to me. So I'm going to encourage everyone to do a temperature check survey. It's something I'm trying, like a 3-question survey of how your teams are doing, who they want to celebrate. And for my leaders, open up yourselves to this question: where do you think I need to grow? I just did mine, and it has been eye-opening. So I encourage people, all of our conscious leaders, to continue the practice, the actual verb of conscious leadership. And Holly, Paul, Dr. Plummer, thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks for having us back.
Thank you all. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Do your week. Bye.
Bye.